week of protest, after 12 days after protest, after protest, after protest, we stand at that first day. And I want to use as a subject, let there be light. Let there be light. You see, light has a way of making things visible that otherwise cannot be seen. I remember when I began to notice in my 40s that my 20/20 vision was no longer there. I was trying to read a serial number on the back of an electronic device, and no matter how much I squinted, I just couldn't see the numbers. I remember calling my youngest son, Trevor, and I asked him if he could see the numbers, and he read them without hesitation. Later that same year, I went to get my driver's license renewed, and at the time, I only needed to take a reading examination. I looked in the vision testing device, and as I was looking, I was unable to see the letters clearly. It was a blur. I asked the examiner if she could check the machine. And she had me try a different machine and a different machine, but the results were the same. The Bible reports in 1 Kings 14:4 that a prophet, a seer named Ahijah, could not see, for his eyes were dim because of his age. A seer or a prophet indicates the new and remarkable powers of perception granted to the prophet. In Hebrew, as in English, the ordinary verb to see is used also of understanding. I see what you mean. And of the power of perception into the nature and meaning of things. He sees things very clearly. But in the case of the prophets, their powers of perception were raised far above normal as the Lord inspired them to become vehicles of his message. You see, it's tragic when the seer's sight grows dim. In this current environment where our children and youth have taken to the streets to protest and resist the taking of their lives by rogue police officers who demand compliance through brutality and dominance, many of us who are their elders have drawn back, critiqued their methods, and failed to see as they see because our eyes have grown dim. We seem to easily make provisions for the outrageous, murderous acts of the police, but we seek a sanitized response, where not only are the protesters expected to know all the rules of decency and respect, but they are also viewed by some as being responsible for opportunists and other infiltrators of their movement who intentionally seek to undermine and diminish support for their fight for justice. Some witnessed the brutality and murder by the police and explained they were just doing their job. They explained that in the moment they cannot separate the peaceful protesters from the looters and persons who are out to destroy property. The policeman in Atlanta who tased 22-year-old Messiah Young and 20-year-old Tanaya Pilgrim, two students from Morehouse and Spelman College who were not protesters, but they just got caught in traffic driving to get some food. And they were forced from their car while a policeman threatened to shoot them. Policemen probably reasoned they were on the way to a looting, as did the other officers who drug a young black woman who was a hygienist from her car in Buckhead in Atlanta and slammed her to the ground, breaking her collarbone. The female student, Tanaya, said, "I still can't process what happened to me. We felt like we were going to die in that car. It's just odd that it ends up being young black people disproportionately being killed and brutalized by police." I'm sure there are some young white people in Buckhead driving in their cars that could have been good candidates for being snatched and beaten and have their bones broken. But for some reason, this young black woman was the one. You see, COVID-19 has brought to light many of the things in America that have been hidden in plain sight. But apparently our eyes have grown dim. Sometimes, with a message, with the passage of time, you can get comfortable with injustice, especially when you have been able to personally insulate yourself from its daily impact. On August 3rd, 1857, Frederick Douglass wrote, "This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle." He said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. In the light of these ideas, Negroes will be hunted at the North and held and flogged at the South, so long as they submit to those devilish outrages and make no resistance, either moral or physical. Men may not get all they pay for in this world, but they must certainly pay for all they get. If we never get free from the oppressions and wrongs heaped upon us, we must pay for their removal. We must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and it needs be, we must do it, if needs be, by our lives and the lives of others. The struggle for freedom from the violence and brutality so frequently visited upon black bodies in America must be resisted with every bone in our black bodies and the bodies of others who believe in justice as well. As violence continues and as violent as our oppressors can be, in this fight we must resist the natural temptation to return violence for violence. And we must be guided by our faith and not abandon our morality and moral compass. We seek to break the chains and handcuffs of injustice through non-violent means, or we become the evil we protest. At the same time, I continue to be concerned about the condemnation and critique by the beneficiaries of the sacrifice. The people who benefit from others sacrificing their lives, and then talk about the timing and method of protest. Many of those who are beneficiaries today complained about Dr. King's timing and methods. Clergy complained, politicians complained, black folk and white folk questioned King's methods. Christians did not all support the movement. Some of them stayed in the church and never left and still sitting there now. He led, and his timing was the timing that God gave him, and countless others gave their lives to sacrifice for the movement forward. We have a long history of people willing to enjoy the fruit, but unwilling to participate in the labor. The beginning of all things is described in Genesis as chaotic and disorderly. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. It was in the darkness, in the chaos, that God's Spirit hovered over the chaos and disorder, and then God broke through the darkness with God's word and announced, "Let there be light." The light provided the necessary foundation for God to bring order to the chaos. The formless void would now be ordered out of the chaos. The cosmos would now emerge. The cosmos representing beauty and order, from which we derive cosmetics and cosmetology, all point to beauty and order. But first, before there can be beauty and order, the darkness has to be illuminated. The darkness has to be displaced. So it is with the darkness of racism and evil in America. As long as we continue to tell and retell lies about the foundation upon which America has been built, ignoring the rape, violence, and pillage and taking of Native American land and the exploitation of African bodies for free labor and violent exploitation of every kind, we will be unable to bring order to the chaos. As long as we keep lying, we will stay in darkness. If there is no light, the darkness will prevail. This is the reason young white children and black children find themselves stuck in a never-ending cycle of chaos, because they have been offered the darkness of lies, retold, rather than truth and light. Slogans like "America is that shining city on a hill" won't stand up to closer scrutiny under the light. The biblical parable in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, from which Ronald Reagan derived his slogan, challenges America rather than celebrates it. In Matthew 5:13 through 16, Jesus says this: "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out, America, and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town, a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." America's light is bright and revealing, but not good deeds. The light reveals a long history of oppression, violence, and police brutality. The light reveals a history of the lynching of black men in the public square. The light, a history of looting the land and the lives of others. A history of the abuse of other human beings. That's what the light reveals. No one with good conscience can raise their voice proclaiming, "Make America great again." Not anyone who knows the darkness and chaos that lie at the root of America. Just what period of American history is being referred to in the phrase "great again"? The violent taking of Native American land? Or maybe the forcible removal of Native Americans from their homes with the Andrew Jackson Indian Removal Act? Could it refer to the enslavement of African people, forced into slavery in the American colonies and exploited to work as indentured servants and free labor in the production of crops like tobacco and cotton? Does it refer to Reconstruction, maybe? The era of Jim Crow and the segregation that followed? Maybe "Make America Great Again" is referring to the Civil Rights era and the violence, dogs, and tear gas that attempted to stop the march toward freedom. That just about brings us to today. Maybe a more honest and less misleading statement would be, let's come together. Let's come together now and make America great for the very first time. Let's be clear. The flag that some believe is sacred because their fathers fought for this country and died, our fathers fought for the country too. But they came home and faced violence and discrimination in the land they fought for, and some of them were killed in the street. Black men and women continue to die in the streets of America every day, many unjustly. So when John Carlos and Tommy Smith stood up during the national anthem at the Olympic Games in Mexico City in 1968 with black fists raised during the national anthem, it was not to dishonor the flag. It was to bring light to the darkness. When Colin Kaepernick and others take a knee, it is not to dishonor the flag. No, the racists and bigots who fly the flag from their pickup trucks and houses while perpetrating hate and violence on black people are the ones dishonoring the flag. It's the police officers who violently murder our sons and daughters and wear flags on their uniforms. Those are the ones who dishonor the flag. It's a president who is profane and disrespects the office, and the presidents who preceded him, and the laws he was sworn to defend in the Constitution. Those are the ones who dishonor the flag. Oh, let there be light, so that we can live together in a loving and just society. Let there be light, so that this nation can live up to its declarations and creeds. Let there be light, so that the people of darkness can be separated from the people of light. Let there be light. Separate the day from the night. Let there be light, because enough is enough. Mm-hmm. The doors of the church are open. And if there's anybody here that God is calling from the darkness into the light, we invite you to come. We invite you to make a commitment this day to give your life to Jesus Christ as Lord.